On November 4, 2025, the skies over the central and eastern Philippines darkened with a sense of finality. The air grew heavy, and an uneasy silence settled over communities as people braced for what was coming. This was Typhoon Kalmaegi, Tino, a Category 3 storm that would soon become infamous for its sheer power and unpredictability. Meteorologists watched anxiously as the storm intensified, its swirling mass growing larger and more menacing by the hour. Winds up to 150 kilometers per hour tore roofs from homes, snapped trees, and hurled debris through the air. The relentless gusts battered everything in their path, leaving destruction in their wake. The typhoon's arrival was a deafening roar, signaling a harrowing ordeal for millions. Families huddled together, listening to the howling winds and the relentless pounding of rain against their homes. Coastal communities, long at peace with the sea, now faced its wrath as a massive storm surge swallowed shorelines and inundated villages. The ocean, once a source of life and livelihood, became a force of destruction. Seawater surged inland, erasing homes and livelihoods in minutes. Families watched helplessly as their possessions and memories were swept away by the relentless tide. Torrential rain shattered records, dumping a month's worth of water in just 24 hours. Streets that were once bustling with life quickly disappeared beneath rising floodwaters. Rivers burst their banks, unleashing torrents of mud and debris. Rural areas were cut off, and entire neighborhoods found themselves isolated by the relentless deluge. Streets became impassable rivers. Cars and buildings vanished beneath the flood. The familiar landscape was transformed into a watery maze, making rescue efforts perilous and slow. The landscape was transformed into chaos, a stark reminder of humanity's vulnerability. In the aftermath, survivors emerged to a world forever changed, their resilience tested by nature's fury. Kalmaegi was not just a storm, it was a force that bent the world to its will, leaving behind stories of loss, survival, and the unbreakable spirit of those who endured. As Kalmaegi approached, over 200,000 people evacuated, carrying what little they could. The exodus was a race against time, but the storm's fury quickly overwhelmed preparations. Families fled through floodwaters in the night, swelling the number of displaced to over 500,000. Evacuation centers overflowed, with 450,000 people crammed into schools and halls, resources stretched thin. Darkness fell as power lines collapsed, plunging Luzon and Samar into blackout. The loss of electricity crippled communication and rescue efforts. In the suffocating dark, families huddled together, isolated and afraid. The storm outside was matched by a struggle for hope within. Vulnerability and fear became as pervasive as the floodwaters. As Kalmaegi battered the archipelago, seismologists detected unsettling tremors near the Philippine Trench. The immense weight of rain and sudden pressure changes threatened to disturb fragile fault lines. The Philippines, on the Pacific Ring of Fire, faced the terrifying prospect of typhoon-triggered earthquakes or volcanic eruptions. Scientists anxiously monitored Mount Mayon and Taal, fearing the storm could awaken these giants. The science is clear: major weather events can trigger seismic activity. For Filipinos, the fear of a second disaster loomed large. News of the tremors spread, fueling anxiety in an already battered nation. The country held its breath, hoping the earth would remain still. Kalmaegi struck a region still reeling from a magnitude 6.9 earthquake in Cebu just weeks earlier. The quake had killed dozens, left thousands homeless, and weakened the land. Torrential rains fell on fractured hillsides, triggering deadly landslides that buried homes and roads. Families already in temporary shelters now faced new threats from floods and mudslides. The psychological toll was immense. survivors of one disaster thrust into another. The sense of safety was shattered twice, deepening despair. The Philippines' geography means disasters rarely occur in isolation. One catastrophe sets the stage for the next, creating a domino effect of destruction. True preparedness requires understanding how risks are interconnected. The flooding in Cebu was worsened by years of environmental neglect. Unchecked quarrying stripped mountains of vegetation, leaving slopes bare and unable to absorb rain. When Kalmaegi hit, water and debris cascaded down, overwhelming rivers and flood channels. Critical infrastructure, drainage canals, retaining walls, failed spectacularly, often due to corruption and poor maintenance. A recent scandal exposed bribery and shoddy construction in flood control projects. As floodwaters receded, public anger surged. Protests erupted, demanding accountability from officials who had failed to protect their communities. The disaster was seen not just as a tragedy, but as a preventable crime. As Kalmaegi's fierce winds finally subsided, the true scale of devastation slowly became heartbreakingly clear to the people of the Philippines. Entire communities were flattened beyond recognition, homes reduced to piles of rubble, and a thick, suffocating layer of mud covered everything in sight, making roads impassable and daily life impossible. The official death toll climbed past 114, with many more still missing, most lost to sudden, violent flash floods that swept through villages in the dead of night, leaving families searching desperately for loved ones. Each number represented not just a statistic, but a shattered family, a life cut short, and a community left to grieve in the ruins. In response, President Marcos Jr. declared a state of national calamity, unlocking emergency funds, imposing price controls, and urging the nation to come together in the face of tragedy. Survivors' stories began to emerge. Families clinging to rooftops for hours, watching helplessly as their homes were swept away, struggling through raging waters to keep loved ones safe, and holding each other close after escaping the flood. The silence that followed the storm was heavy, filled with grief, uncertainty, and the daunting task of starting over. Yet, amidst the overwhelming loss, tales of resilience and community spirit began to surface, as neighbors reached out to help one another. Neighbors helped neighbors, volunteers supported families in need, and people comforted each other, refusing to let despair win. The nation mourned its losses, but even in the darkest moments, the spirit to rebuild and hope for a better tomorrow began to shine through. In the aftermath, rescue workers and volunteers braved treacherous waters to save lives. The military and Coast Guard airlifted stranded families, risking their own safety. A tragic helicopter crash underscored the dangers faced by rescuers. Relief agencies mobilized, delivering food, water, and medical aid, despite blocked roads and destroyed bridges. In crowded shelters, aid workers offered comfort and support to the traumatized. The Filipino spirit of bayanihan, communal unity, shone through. Ordinary citizens organized relief drives, sharing what little they had. Compassion and solidarity became as vital as any resource. This collective effort marked the first step on the long road to recovery. Kalmaegi was not an isolated event, but part of a global trend that's reshaping weather patterns across the planet. Superstorms are becoming more common, and their impacts are being felt in every corner of the globe. Climate change is making typhoons not only more intense and frequent, but also more unpredictable. Communities are facing storms that are stronger and more destructive than ever before. Warmer oceans, fueled by greenhouse gas emissions, supercharge storms, giving them more energy to grow rapidly and travel farther than in the past. The Western Pacific has seen record-high sea temperatures for years, giving storms more energy and making the region especially vulnerable to extreme weather events. Kalmaegi's rapid intensification is a warning of what's to come, a sign that future storms could become even more dangerous, with little time to prepare. A warmer atmosphere holds more moisture, leading to record-breaking rainfall and catastrophic floods that overwhelm cities and rural areas alike. The Philippines is on the front lines of a crisis it did little to cause, bearing the brunt of storms that are growing in strength and frequency. After Kalmaegi, another storm brewed east of Mindanao. Recovery time is vanishing, as communities barely have a chance to rebuild before the next disaster strikes. The cycle of destruction and rebuilding is relentless, putting immense strain on resources, families, and the nation's resilience. Climate change is a clear and present danger, demanding urgent action from leaders, communities, and every one of us to protect our future. As the waters recede, the Philippines faces a daunting question: how to prepare for a future of ever stronger storms. Traditional coping methods may no longer suffice. True resilience demands rethinking where and how people live, enforcing building codes, restoring natural defenses, and rooting out corruption. Infrastructure must be built for a volatile climate, not the past. The challenge is immense and requires global support. Climate finance and technology transfer are matters of justice. The Filipino spirit is strong, but spirit alone cannot hold back the next storm. As the nation rebuilds, the next typhoon is already forming. The world must act before it's too late.